Conversations. This afternoon, I have the pleasure of having my mom, Phyllis Robb, here. And it is a maybe 55-ish year relationship that we've had. We've been hanging around each other for 55 years-ish. And before we get started, I'm going to turn this music down, and I would like to read why I've created ReSounding Wholeness Conversations. I was moved to create this space and time once a month, maybe twice a month, depending on what's stirring within me. But ReSounding Wholeness Conversations is about highlighting everyday, what I consider everyday human beings who are doing and being important, inspirational people on the planet. And here is the statement for ReSounding Wholeness Conversations. In a world that idolizes celebrities, gurus, athletes, fashion, the latest trends, technology, media, and more, it is our goal to highlight human beings who are sharing their unique, incredible soul's purpose and service in the world. While they may not have the biggest following or even be on social media, as in the case of my mom at this point, these courageous beings are making an incredible impact in the world, creating energetic ripples that will collectively serve to move mountains and reshape the future of humanity on this planet. We hope to encourage and inspire more people to reconnect with their unique gifts, step into their true soul's calling, take actions to serve humanity, and be a way shower at this pivotal time in history and her story. And with that, I just thank you, Mom, for being willing to come on this medium with me today, to just share a bit about your life experience, what has guided you, what has moved you through your 77 years.
That's it.
77 years on this planet. And so what I would love to do is just go ahead and, what I'll say is my mom was a very successful person in growing up. She started out as a housewife, had 3 children back to back, bam, bam, bam. I was the last bam. I was the youngest. I'm the youngest. But really, as we started growing up, my mom was able to step into the working world with such a determination, poise, and success. It was very, very inspiring to witness her just follow her passion, what I perceived as her passion, and find success in her life. So much so that this is the first question. When did you retire, Mom?
I retired at age 55.
Wow.
And that was always our plan.
Really?
Yes. I started working when I was 16 at the Milford Dime store as a sales clerk and then as a cashier. I worked while I was in college. I left college and went to work again. I worked until I got married. I took 6 years off to have 3 children. And when you went to first grade, I went back to work full time.
Yes.
And your dad and I were 2 oxen yoked together, pulling in the same direction. So he worked and provided for all the necessities. And I worked for the extras. I worked for summer camp and music lessons and really nice vacations and 1 car and 2 cars and 3 cars. I was always providing the extras. And so one of the deals with your dad was that I would always get to pay myself first. And by that, I mean, I worked for Xerox and I worked for Apple, who compensated their employees generously, but didn't provide any retirement. That was sort of, they paid you well, you took care of the rest. So I never took my full salary. I always had at least 10 or 15 or 20% held back, always going into savings, always going into investments, so that when I turned 55, your dad and I got something we both always wanted.
What's that?
A wife.
A wife.
A wife, somebody who
Tell me about that.
went to the cleaners and grocery shopped and cooked and cleaned and got the car washed and called the handyman. We didn't have a wife for the first long time we were married. We both worked really hard. Our kids were very, very willing to pitch in after a time. But the plan was that when I turned 55, I would step back. He could work as long as he wanted. And it worked out because I paid myself first. Saved money. I never spent a whole paycheck. And the luxury was I had a guy, a husband, a partner, who actually, took care of all the essentials. Lots of women and families today don't have that luxury. We were very fortunate.
Yes. Well, I mean, and literally you've traveled the world, you've gone on trips, you got to go see places that you dreamed of when you were a child.
Yep.
Some of the places you've gotten to take us, the family, on incredible trips most recently to the Cayman Islands, that we got to do that when I graduated college. My parents took us all to the Cayman Islands as a celebration of getting all the kids through college. And then 3 years ago, I think it was now, 2 or 3 years ago, we got to all go together with the grandchildren. And that was really, really beautiful, really, really generous, really awesome that you could do all that.
It was my birthday present to me.
You paid you first.
I turned 75 and Dad said, "What would you like to do?" And I said, "Let's take everybody to the Cayman Islands." So we did that. It was really wonderful.
So looking back as a child, what I know is that you grew up in a very different kind of life, not a lot of money, Milford, Michigan, small town feel. Do you remember what you wanted to be when you grew up? Did you have any thoughts about that when you were little?
I knew I didn't want to live in my hometown. I wanted to live in a city. I wanted to have freedom. I wanted to be in charge. My parents adopted me in their 60s, so I was raised on their Social Security check.
Wow.
And when I turned 18, my portion of their benefits went away. So I knew when I was 18, I needed to do something really fast. But yeah, I wanted to be somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't going to happen in the town that I was born in.
Yeah.
So I wanted yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, finish your sentence.
No, I just wanted to get the hell out of Dodge.
Yeah, just wanted to get that. Move on. Next. Did you have any dreams at 18? Any particular dreams?
Yeah. I wanted to have a family. I was the youngest of the siblings. My next oldest brother was 14. So by the time I was in kindergarten, he had already moved on. So I was raised as an only child, and I knew I wanted to have children.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that I wanted to look for the very best daddy that they could have, and I found him in your dad and in Mr. Bill. And then I knew I wanted to have a career. I did crazy stuff. I did advertising copywriting, and I edited doctoral dissertations. And I was able to be at Xerox at a time when they had a very aggressive affirmative action program for women. So I was put in a high potential profile, fast-paced program, and I got to take doctoral dissertation abstracts, which are the summaries of somebody's lifelong research,
Yeah.
and put it into a database so that it could be searched. And this happened in the, in the early 70s, before people even knew what personal computers were. So I really got a chance to jump into that technology early on. And after that, Apple looked like the right place to go. So I worked for Xerox, I worked for Apple, and I will tell you this, if I were going to get a job today, the
Yes.
company I would work for would be Tesla.
Tesla.
And I'd want to be in sales. It's really easy to sell something that you believe in.
Yes.
If you believe in it, then I think if you were a sales rep for Tesla, you'd have a really good time going forward.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, I had aspirations and dreams. I knew that I wanted to have a family, and I knew I wanted to work and explore the world.
Yes. And I remember at Xerox, I think that you were a manager, like you had
Yes.
a team of people. So you worked your way through, different roles, and then they saw your management potential and go-getter, she was a go-getter for sure. And then at Apple, you ended up doing sales and training. You did a lot of wonderful things for Apple Computer in the Michigan region.
I started out as a trainer, training the new sales rep. And then I went to work for Apple when they introduced the Mac.
Yeah.
And then in my sales part of that job, I called on colleges and universities. So I called on institutions that really embraced the technology, both for students and faculty and staff and research. So I was in the right place at the right time.
And you were traveling a lot.
Oh
You were
my,
on the road all the time.
yeah, my territory was Michigan, Ohio, West Virginia, Upper and Lower Michigan. That's like having Wisconsin too. So yeah, I spent a lot of time on the road.
So you and Dad both were in the computer realm, computer
Yes.
industry,
Yeah.
from very early on. So there's a lot of people your age who aren't as computer literate as you guys are. And I think it's kind of funny that most of the time you and Dad have more of the latest technology than me or your grandchildren, your kids or your grandchildren.
We are early innovators. There's no doubt about it. In fact, one of the conversations that Dad and I were just having was, we want to live long enough that we can pick up our phone and have Siri deliver a car to our driveway to take me to get my nails done, or to the grocery store, or my eye appointment. And we wouldn't have a car. We would just have an automobile like a Tesla on call for us. And I would say, take me to Dr. Babe's office, and the car would take me there, and it would bring me back home, and then it would go wherever it parks like a horse in the stable. That's what I want to live long enough to do. I want to see us all, and for older people, for seniors, that kind of independence, to be able to go where you want to go safely, is really important. And Dad and I both had our cars modified by the University of Michigan, so that they've been collecting data on our travels and patterns for about the last 8 years. And that all goes into a database that helps self-driving vehicles make good decisions when you're in the car and not at the steering wheel.
Wow. That's amazing. I think that's so cool that you guys are a part of that. Like you want to be a part of that. I know Dad has always said he wanted to live to be 100 just because he wanted to see what technology would be doing with how much things have advanced so much over the years.
Yeah.
Um, so kind of going back, reflecting on your beginnings, could you have imagined the life you've led?
Absolutely not. You know, growing up in a little girl in a small town, I think I rode it on a train once in my 18 years,
Wow.
and I hadn't even been across the bridge to Canada till after I got married. So again, your dad, that other ox pulling in the same direction, really made it possible because we moved 11 times in 4 years
Oh my
and had
gosh.
3 children while we were doing it. And then we've moved 5 times in Ann Arbor. One
Yeah.
of the things that, because I worked, we could always sort of move to a bigger house.
Yes.
And so we just, kept upgrading, and real estate was a good investment in Ann Arbor. So yeah. Yeah, no, I could never have envisioned where I ended up.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, I wrote down, I asked, what are some of the standout experiences that surpassed your expectations? Is there anything that stands out to you in your 77 years of beyond your expectations or made you giggle? Made you giggle
Oh,
like,
wow. Um,
I'm really here. I'm really doing this.
yeah, being one of the things that I would encourage your generation to do that Dad and I have done, and you and Kevin did with us just one time, is
Yeah.
take advantage of Road Scholar, which
Uh-huh.
is a group of people who travel the world together. And you pay your money and you shows up, and it's an educational pursuit as well as fine dining and great accommodations at a very affordable price. And so an overseas adventure travel is another organization that allows you to travel around the world with a guide and safely. And I think the places that we've been and the adventures that we've had together traveling outside of our home have certainly exceeded anything that I ever could have dreamed of as a 10-year-old girl.
Well, and I do have a sense, I mean, I know from hearing you that you've been pivotal in most of those trips happening. Like you're the one that says, let's do this, let's go do that.
I
Let's
have a willing partner.
he's like, okay.
Yep.
You've been the one that says, I want to go see this place, let's go do that. And it happens.
Yep.
I love that. So what do you think gave you the perseverance to accomplish and experience all that you have?
I think it's the ability to dream dreams, to close your eyes and imagine yourself doing something daring and then figuring out what kind of training you need and expertise and what's the shortest route to get there. Again, what really helps is if you have a willing partner. And I was lucky enough to have a guy who still does go, oh my God, you want to do what? Okay.
So if in another life you didn't have a partner, what would you like? Do you think you would have been able to figure these things out?
I don't know that I would have had the luxury of never having to worry about getting the rent paid.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
know, that was never an issue because that part of our life, my life, was always solid.
Yeah.
And I look at young people today, unmarried and married, where they scratch really hard
Yes.
to make ends meet so that the frosting on the cake, the extra dollop of whipped cream is really hard to achieve.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's true. Yeah. So, since you've been retired 22 years, 22 years,
Yes.
um, what have you been doing during that time? What kinds of things have kept you engaged and interested in living
Well,
life?
well, when I was driving home from Cleveland, Ohio, on the Ohio Turnpike at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I could hardly keep my eyes open, I said, when I retire, I'm going to take a nap every afternoon at 4 o'clock. And by golly, I do that. I
Nice.
mean, I might not fall asleep, but if I'm here, I get horizontal with a book or my iPad with Judge Judy, with oftentimes my husband right beside me, and I take a nap. That was the number one thing that I told myself when I retired that I was going to do, besides being a good wife. And I am a good wife.
You are.
I'm the one I always wanted.
And you still have the house cleaner, though. You have
Oh, yes.
that wife that you want.
Yes. One of the
extra hand.
things that, again, a second paycheck offered is that we've always had a cleaning lady. And
Mhm.
she makes the house smell good once a month, and that's really good. So, but I thought that maybe I'd like to be a docent at the University of Michigan Art Museum, and so I actually looked into that. And then I met the docents who were there, who had been there for 35 years, who knew everything. And I knew very quickly that I didn't have the length of time to learn all of the good things they did. So I looked around for other things that I might do. And so I still do some very interesting things. I joined the Ann Arbor Thrift Shop, which has been around since 1932. And it's an organization that takes donations, makes them look pretty, and sells them out the front door. And with all of the sales, we're all volunteers, about 300 women, no paid staff. We provide cash to about 75 agencies in Washtenaw County. It's the only place a caseworker can call and say, I need $700 on Friday to keep my client and her children from being evicted. And we can do that. We can provide cash. No cash ever goes to the client, but we'll go to her landlord and make the payment. So
Yes.
I worked there as a clerk. I worked there as a marker in the back room, and I've worked as a call taker working with the agencies. So that was fun. I also worked for food gatherers here in Ann Arbor, and I shelved canned goods and staples in a food pantry. In a county like ours, which is very wealthy for all practical purposes, we have a huge number of people who are challenged with regular food and feeding their family. So working for food gatherers was a lot of fun. I worked with another friend who I worked with from the thrift shop too. So we would go to the pantry and stock shelves. What's the number one thing that food pantries don't need?
Peanut butter,
No, we need peanut butter.
bread.
No, we don't need tomato soup.
Okay. No tomatoes.
We don't need ramen noodles. We need peanut butter and cheese and tuna fish. We need canned things, exactly, protein.
Mhm.
Why we get a lot of Jello and ramen noodles is because when the students leave the university, they take everything out of their pantry and dump it at food gatherers. So we have tons of
Ramen
tomato soup,
noodle.
tons of ramen noodles. We drown in them, we make sure if you come in to get anything, at least you take 10 ramen noodles with you when you go home. But yeah, and that was an eye-opener from a whole other a part of need. I never realized how many food challenged families there really are in Washtenaw County, and it's real. It's really real. Most people are much too proud to tell their neighbor that there's nothing left in the refrigerator, but they can quietly come and shop at the food pantry at food gatherers, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And I think right now you're volunteering at Kiwanis.
Right, and I moved
Well, not at the moment, you're not, but yes.
Right, we're closed because of COVID, but it used to be that Dad would go to Kiwanis and I would go to the thrift shop. And then a friend of mine said, you know, they could use you a couple of days a week at Kiwanis too, and you certainly got free time. So we decided to that's something that we could do together. And so Dad managed the electronics department, and I dig down into the barrels and sort out the donations. And it's fun. I mean, I'm a rag picker, and it's fun to do. But I want to tell you very quickly about the best volunteer job Dad and I ever had together.
Okay. Yeah.
And it happened because of your grandmother and the worst Christmas Eve I ever had in my life. Gigi.
Which grandmother?
Gigi.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
My Milford relatives. Michelle and I were trying to make Christmas Eve perfect for she and my sibling brother. And it all fell apart. And at 11 o'clock at night in Milford on Christmas Eve, my brother was demanding that I feed his mother. They never showed up at Michelle's house, at my other daughter's house. They forgot how to get there. I think my brother had a drug problem. So he took her back home. And when we arrived to drop off and give her their gifts, he met me at the car and said, we haven't eaten all day. It's 11 o'clock at night. So your father said, you will not do anything except pass gifts. And he put me in the car and we drove home. And as we're driving down the country roads, I'm looking in homes where the Christmas tree lights are and I'm saying things like, my real family lives there. Let's go to that house. Anyway, I said to him, we will never do this again on Christmas Eve. I will never kill myself to make somebody else's Christmas Eve perfect at the expense of my husband and family. So we went to the University of Michigan and volunteered to rock babies. We worked together on Thursday nights at U of M Hospital in the NICU in the neonatal ward, and took very fragile babies. He'd take one and we would rock babies. And for several Christmas Eves, that's exactly what we did. We rocked babies. And I could say to Grandma in Milford, as much as I'd like to cook all day for you, Bill and I are going to be at the hospital so that other families can have a break and they know that somebody's loving and rocking their babies. That's one of the most wonderful things that we did together. It was just so much fun.
Beautiful. Well, the theme is service for sure. The theme is service. You're continuing, both you and Dad are continuing to provide it within your own community. You're out there doing things. You also help with voting, when very, very active in the voting process there in the region.
For 15 years, we've been election officials, and this is the first presidential election that we didn't work, and primarily was because of COVID.
Yes.
We're past 75, Dad's at 85.
Yeah.
They really didn't want, we were at risk.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, given about how badly Michigan has been criticized for the results, I'm sort of glad we sat that one out. But no, being an election official, if you can do that, just teaches you so much about how democracy really works. It's really important to do.
So another thing I want to mention, the fact that you were retired during that time at 55, is you got to be very involved in your grandchildren's lives.
Yes, I was 48 years old when I became a grandma. I became a granny at 48.
My gosh, that's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. That's really, it was really very special. And Tyler and Danielle live 5 minutes to the north, and David and Janice's kids, Kaylee and Caroline, lived, 10 minutes in the other direction. So it was, you know, when I was working, your grandma, Bill's mom, Nana, was in Ann Arbor, and if I had a sick kid, Nana could come over and, knit and, feed you chicken soup. And I could do that. I could take my kids to the doctor, pick them up from school, or take them to soccer practice or basketball practice if their mom and dads were someplace else. That was just a lot of fun. It was just a luxury of being able to do that.
Well, and I feel like during that time being a grandparent, you got to be a lot more whimsical in your and you're very magical in your some of the things that you shared with them, that you did with them. What was the there was something about candy, like there was something that you created.
The candy fairy, yeah.
Candy fairy, yes.
Right. Well, in order to get a visit from the candy fairy, you had to find a feather.
Oh.
So when you were walking or out and about, particularly if you're with Granny and Pa, if you found a bird feather, that was an invitation to the candy fairy. You came home and you laid the feather on the brick front porch, and with chalk, you had to outline the feather and leave it there and then go away.
Yes.
You couldn't stay at the house, you had to leave. You had to go someplace.
Yeah.
And magic of magic. When you came back the next day, and the feather was gone, but on that outline of the feather was more candy than you've ever seen in your whole life. Bags and bags of Snickers and Reese's Pieces and lollipops and Skittles and yeah. But the funny thing about this candy fairy is I got a phone call from a Chinese mom at I think it was Caroline's school.
Yes.
Who said to me in her broken English, "We know about the Tooth Fairy and Santa Claus and Elf on a Shelf. We never hear about Candy Fairy. Can you tell me more?" So I had to explain to her that it was my way of indulging my grandchildren on more candy than they could ever imagine. I need to back up. My grandchildren grew up knowing that when they were with me, they couldn't ask for anything. If we were out and about, they couldn't say, "Can we have an ice cream? Granny, can we stop at McDonald's? Granny, can I have that toy?" And what I explained to them was simple. When you ask for something, you take my joy away. What you don't know is what I was about to offer could have been so much greater than that piece of candy or that toy. So when you're out with me, never ask for anything. And they never did. They were wonderful. I could take them everywhere. And there was never a, "I want, can I have, we need," never. They were wonderful. But I also came through.
Oh yeah.
Along with the candy fairy.
Along with
yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I loved hearing the stories of the grandchildren getting those fun things. And I want to just take a side trip. Fairyland is very alive and well in our family now.
Yeah.
My sister Michelle is the fairy gardeness. She brought the fairy world to us some years ago, and
She made my magic wand.
Right, look at that.
Which works. Isn't this beautiful?
Holy wow! Wait, let's see. And go a little. Bring the bigger end closer to. There you go. Yeah. Yes.
Isn't that beautiful? And then
Beautiful.
point here. Yes, I have my own very magic wand, thanks to Michelle.
Yeah.
Yes, and Michelle does fairy gardens and
gourds and beautiful.
Yes.
Very crafty, artsy people we are. So something else that you've done since you retired. This is something where, like growing up, there were a few pieces, a few things that indicated that my mom was crafty and artistic. And I remember a picture of a hand-drawn knot, like a piece of rope that had my mom, I'm pretty sure you did that. It was one of your, yeah, right. So you did art at some point when you were younger. And then I remember you doing creating the nativity scene out of paper mache, right?
It was muslin and starch over crutet boxes. I mean, it was something I saw in a book, and I decided that I was going to make them on. That we put out that nativity scene every year, and it's three wise men and Mary and Joseph. The manger's made out of popsicle sticks, and it's all sprayed gold. But for the most part, I never really had time to do much art. And after I retired, I took a ceramics class. I decided that I was going to try needlepoint, and played with that for a while. And I do watercolor, and I dabble. I get inspired and I dabble.
Yeah, you are really actually very, very good at watercolor.
Thank you. I really enjoy it. It's fun. Bill, your Nana was an art teacher, and it was not anything that I felt like I wanted to compete with my mother-in-law on, because she was the artist in residence, and I was just really happy with that. That was not a problem. But now I'm able to play, and if you were in the house, you'd see that my kitchen table is my art studio. It's all covered with stuff.
Yeah. So you got to explore other aspects of yourself as you retired that you didn't have the time to do.
Right.
That's important. So, okay, so we've covered all those things. We know we want to talk about, we kind of going to go into 2020 a little bit, what's happened, and especially some of what we've learned about isolation and loneliness, and trying to figure out how to live in a very different structure for not everybody. A lot of people are out there on the front lines, like David, our brother, is a nurse who's working. But I want to talk about, in comparison, this 2020 experience is unlike really any experience that we've had in our lifetime or your lifetime. Is what are some of the pivotal moments in your lifetime that were, I want to say, disturbing, were challenging, were that you lived through, that you can recall?
Yeah. As a very young child, I'm going to say 1952. So I wasn't quite 10 years old yet. Both my sisters developed polio. And in the small town where I grew up, everybody knew that my sisters, married, not living at home where I was, had polio. So my friends weren't allowed to play with me. I mean, we didn't understand where polio came from. This was before the Salk and the Sabine vaccines. And so the pandemic that we're experiencing now, and that fear of catching something that could be terrible. Yes. There were people who got polio and didn't end up in iron lungs. There were people who got polio and stayed in a wheelchair for their whole life. There were people who got polio who died very quickly. Mm-hmm. Both my sisters recovered eventually, although I think they had organ damage that didn't allow them to live into their 70s and 80s and 90s. Yeah. But this pandemic and people's fear of getting it from somebody or isolating out of reminds me very much of the polio epidemic in the early 50s in Michigan. So that brings back some not pleasant memories. Yeah. But I don't want to talk about politics, but the things that we see on TV now, I would have thought the race relations when Martin Luther King was assassinated, I had 3 little babies living here in Ann Arbor, and was in my living room and cried for days. I was in California going to my OBGYN for my son David when the cab driver told me that JFK had been assassinated and died. That was a week that I lived through that I just couldn't imagine. Watching the Twin Towers come down on 9/11 was another wrenching time in my life. Those were terrible things, awful. This pandemic is made worse because so many people don't believe it's as serious as it really is.
Yeah.
And you and I both know people who've been seriously affected by it. Yeah. Survived, but spent a long time in the hospital, and life will never be back to normal. For Dad and I, during this pandemic, we learned that we get along pretty damn well. I don't go anywhere except Costco, CVS, and maybe a little Krogering occasionally. We canceled our Christmas party. We had Thanksgiving for the two of us. We're not getting together for Christmas Eve or Christmas Day or New Year's. We are trying to do our best to stay in, stay safe, and be well, and set a good example for our friends and family.
So one of the things I kind of want to say is that, and this is partly my growing up in Ann Arbor, Michigan, that seems very culturally diverse because of the university, and then going to the Bay Area myself, California, the first part of my adult life career, 11 years in the Bay Area, where it's very culturally diverse and everybody is working to get things done. When I came here to the South, I was blown away because I didn't realize how deeply ingrained the racism and that culture of that is still alive here. Because I didn't grow up here, I didn't see it. I didn't experience it quite the way that I have since I've lived here for almost 21 years, basically. But I imagine that you growing up in the 60s and everything that, you guys were standing for and what you felt was like, we're moving forward, in women's movement and, race relations and all that, to come to 2020 and all of the scenarios, all the situations that are happening, and really see that the underbelly of this nation is still so.
I feel like a complete failure. I mean, I talk the talk, and I thought I walked the walk,
Yes.
But there's so much that's been undone, and so much that's left to be done. I feel a hole in my soul about how much we've let down my children, my grandchildren.
Yeah.
I feel like I failed in so many ways.
I feel my sense is when we're seeing that there are people that believe that you're supposed to wear masks and people who don't, people who believe that, the racial issues are real, and the people who are just, gloss over it or don't want to deal with it, white, malarkey. I feel like it's almost like the underbelly of our nation that we've had blinders on. We didn't realize we had blinders on, that all of this stuff was still happening and we just didn't see it. And so this COVID forces us to look at so many things in our own lives. And I want to go back to the isolation, and I want to talk about senior citizens in our country and what we've done to disconnect the vital wisdom of the elderly and the children growing up. There's a huge disconnect between the new generation and the generations leaving the planet. And I know that in more primitive, or, in the olden days, the grandparents were a vital part of the grandchildren's lives. There was the need for the grandparents to watch the grandchildren while the parents did their work. And there was important things that happened as a result of that. And so many of our elderly are isolated in what I consider prison. You know, in a beautiful prison for some of them, in a terrible, horrible situation for others. So it's like I'm seeing now as more and more of us are alone in our homes, or if we don't have partners, we're alone, or let's talk a little bit about that. Granted, you've had dad there, but there's been days, right, where it's just like, why do we continue doing this? This is crazy. And imagine if you were alone.
I do that. I try to imagine what I would do. He has his studio downstairs. I have my study upstairs. So there are whole parts of the day where, except for hearing the toilet flush downstairs, I could be alone.
Yeah.
Isolation is deadly. People need stimulation, physical touch, mental stimulation, self-soothing. People need vibrators. There are things that we can do for self-soothing that really do meet our needs. Old people, seniors, old crones like me, we need our privacy as well as we need hugs. Basics, though. If you don't have enough money to get nutritious food, or if you're not mentally sharp enough to remember your name or that you haven't eaten breakfast, I mean, there are some things that happen to us as we age that make us terribly vulnerable. And you can put all the safety nets you want, and you can make a place as sweet smelling and clean, but if you don't know your name, life is pretty awful. So things like Parkinson's disease, things like Alzheimer's, things like Lewy bodies, things like just aging dementia, I'm watching happen to my peers, to my best friends, to people I've known forever, and I'm helpless to help them. Their families are helpless to help them. And I'm saying to all of you young people, as we all live longer, there are going to be more and more people with health issues and mental health issues. How do we get our arms around that? You can't just drug everybody so that they're sitting in a stupor and drooling all day, so they're easier to take care of. Although that's what we do when we put people in institutions, independent living. Trying to help my friends who are losing their marbles is really tough. So to tell you that I don't have any answers is kind of mean, but there are things that can improve people's lives. I have a couple of text threads going on with a small group and then a family group, and those are wonderful because we can just touch bases, make each other giggle, talk about serious issues, check in on each other. Zoom's been very helpful. FaceTime, again, technology, an iPhone, an iPad, giving people resources that they can entertain themselves with what I call things that are enrichment things. Yeah. Music is key. Music is key to people with mental problems, with physical problems. Karen, you know better than anybody what a room full of people with Parkinson's, how they come alive when you start singing a song that they knew, like Old MacDonald Had a Farm, and they all suddenly can all remember it and start, moving to the music. So bringing art and music into our all of our lives, whether we're alone or we're in an institutional setting, is vital for the quality of life. Good nutrition, health care. Much of it comes down to how much our government will do to support the aging population.
I also feel, though, that we've been educated or entrained to be so independent that we don't say we have needs. We're not paying attention to the elderly as human beings, as that they need connection, that they need, and I go back to the technology. Like, you and Dad are pretty rare. I don't know what the percentage is, but I know a number of people in my world right now who are isolated, in their apartments, being kept, safe, but their technology uses, they get more frustrated, or they do it wrong, working with their technology, and it just is very disheartening for them. Now, that may change as we move forward, as more of us are more technologically advanced, but I feel like there's a need for us to take a better step at connecting with each other. Really, really making ways, like, after this pandemic is gone, the people who have lived what isolation feels like need to take that awareness into the lives of the elderly. And we need to make sure that we value and respect the wisdom, the beauty, the capabilities that the older people have. You and Dad are, for me, a perfect example of continuing to serve even as you age, whether you're making money or not.
Yeah, that's really important. You asked me a question a while back about what I would tell my grandchildren if this was the last day on earth, and I knew that this was the last time I get to talk to them. And I would tell them several things. First of all, never be a bystander. Never witness something that's horrible and walk away from it or not say anything. Never be a bystander. Second is do something every day for somebody else, because there's always somebody out there who could use a pat on the back, a smile, a free cup of coffee. We can't hug, but there'll come a time we can do that. Giving something to someone else, your time, reading somebody a story, writing somebody a letter, sending somebody an email, picking up the phone and making a phone call. Do something every day for somebody else, because that will make you really happy. And most of all, laugh out loud, belly laugh. A sense of humor, finding happiness in anything. But if you can laugh out loud every day about something, it really helps. So it's do something for somebody else, never be a bystander, and laugh your butt off. The end. That's what I would say.
Yeah, those are great. Those are great. Thank you. I want to talk about the resounding, the sunrise sound circle thing that we've been doing, just briefly, because I started doing it in the recent months, getting up. Kevin's now working, getting up very, very early at 4:30 in the morning to be at work by 6 a.m. And so I've been awake. And for years, I've been like, I want to have a circle of people drumming in my backyard as the sun rises, and maybe someday in my communal living scenario that will happen. Now we're, not able to be together in physicality. I started doing these virtual sunrise sound circles, and my mom, Phyllis, has been there pretty much every time I've had one. And especially in the recent weeks, we've had a nice solid group of about 5 or 6 women coming together. And talk about your experience from the beginning when you first started, and now what it feels like for you participating in that.
Well, when we first started, it was really early and it really was sunrise and it was really hard to roll out. It was early. But now it's no pressure. I mean, it's come as you are. I'm in my bathrobe. Women are just rolling out of bed, hair all done, a blanket over them, hunched in their bed, no light. It's just a come as you are, show up, don't brush your teeth, just hit the log on button and say hello. So the process, of course, is a reading, which sort of sets the tone. But then what's really wonderful is you talk very briefly about how you're coming into the day. How do you feel? And then we beat the hell out of the drum, make noise, bang, bang, bang. And then we set our intentions for the day. And that is mind-blowing to me, because all of us may never do any of the things that day that we set our intentions for. That's not the whole point. The point is that we take the time to think about what our intentions for that day will be. And the one thing I've learned from this group of women and some of the circles before is we all just do it a day at a time. That's it. Every morning is a new day, and it's a day at a time. And that's how you really succeed. One step in front of the other, one intention, met or not met, do it again tomorrow. And it's wonderful, Karen. It's just wonderful. Do I hate it when my alarm goes off? Oh boy, yeah. But the fact that we don't have to brush our teeth or get dressed, we can just show up, is really terrific. You don't sit any
coffee.
Well, yeah.
Coffee or whatever.
But yeah.
Well, I want to say that what being together in community, even though we're in different areas of the country, coming together, what we're going through, it's like we're being vulnerable and saying, I woke up feeling crappy today, and just being honest about how we're really feeling is really important. And then to watch how everybody's connection and sharing really transforms each one of us throughout the process. And it's beautiful because you are, in most cases, the eldest of the group. But to watch people and hear people say to me outside of the time, your mom is so amazing. Your mom is so wise. Your mom is I'm so glad she's part of it. And I'm getting a little emotional and feeling a bit of emotion because there are so many human beings like you, Mom, out there in the world wishing that they had a group of people that wanted them to show up, to share themselves. And we have a 30-year-old, we have 50 and 60 and 70, like we have a variety of ages that we're all learning from each other and all witnessing each other and uplifting each other just by being together. And so I just want to say that it's so powerful. And it takes 21 days to change a behavior or habit. And I've learned that in many ways this year, having more time to embark on different types of meditation programs and abundance programs and this. And truly to change your pattern, you have to be committed. And the value of this particular practice, I think, is so important. I really firmly believe that every day it's like Groundhog's Day. It is that movie. We have been programmed to say it's a continuum of days and time, but really every morning we wake up is, what are the choices I'm going to make today in this day? Really end up cultivating what happens in your day. And the more we pre-program it and say, well, I have to do all this list of things, and then beat ourselves up because we didn't do all the things, is kind of a disservice to, ourselves in some
As
way.
one of your attendees says, and this resonates with me every day, we don't give ourselves enough grace.
Right.
Our expectations are we have to make this list and check everything off or the day is a failure. And the truth is, no. I got up, I drank my coffee, I showed up at the drum circle, and the rest of the day, I have intentions. I hope I get them done, but if I don't, the day was not a failure. And I laughed a little and I felt good. And I'm looking forward to, drumming with the group next week too. So it's a wonderful process. But what I learned most is we are just all hanging on and doing it a day at a time.
So thank you. Thank you for being a part of that. And I know I could go back and write down, and I probably will, as I'm going to go back through the notes, because I take notes. And there have been some really great, profound things that came out of your mouth, out of other women's mouths, really sweet, awesome statements. We come up with intention words that we sing and sound and drum together at the end. That could be poems, that could be beautiful things. I feel like I want to go back and gather some of those nuggets and share them, maybe in the comments section related to this this conversation. Think about ways that you all can connect that are meaningful, that's beyond your comfort zone, because this is truly a time of growth and expansion and finding new ways to move forward. And we need to connect the young people with the older people, because there is a symbiotic relationship that is in nature, where it requires that kind of level of connection and sharing and being in community together. So I'm going to continue to figure out fostering that more.
Right.
Of that.
And that's part of your resounding wholeness, Karen.
Yes.
Resounding wholeness for me is an emphatic balance that's looking, as my drum falls, is looking at you as a person, your environment, and trying to figure out what's missing and put it there.
Yes.
Resounding wholeness.
Yes.
Resounding, emphatically trying to balance your truth. Well, that's simple enough.
It's a journey we all get to take. That's the exciting thing, is resounding wholeness is truly a journey for each individual person to figure out what that is, because we're all born with into different circumstances. We're all born with different gifts, and we're coming of age. They talk about the divine feminine returning, the understanding of the receiving aspect of the feminine. We've been so programmed to be action oriented and mental and pushing and schedules and what's your 5-year goals, what's your 10-year goals, and literally right now in most people's lives it's like, what do I need to do to get through today? And there's a beauty in learning how to start living from what's the present moment need? Who am I? What am I doing here? How do I be of service? How do I take what gifts I have and activate them in the world? How do I stay true to me while I give, the most of myself to other people? What is balance? What is that receptive, spirit guided information that we act out into the world? So Thank you for being a part of, really, truly, you've been with me as that idea of resounding wholeness has been birthing and coming to fruition. So so you did talk about if your last day on earth, what would you want your grandchildren to know, to take with them? And granted, your grandchildren are in the 22 to 30 range, at this point. So hope, grace, gratitude, a lot of the words that we've been talking about intentionally in the sunrise sound circles. Having gotten through 2020 and seeing that we're shifting politically at some level going into 2021, what do you hope for as we move out of 2020 and into what's next?
Something that we can all do every day, and that's simply be kind. I tend to be very impatient with people who don't believe as I do, and I need to practice kindness and patience because it's what the world really needs at this moment in time. We need to bring back respect for each other and genuine kindness in every possible way. It sounds so simple, but if everyone would just be kind, it would make 2021 a really good place to be. A really good place to be.
And what we have to remember too is kindness starts with being kind to ourselves. Because if we're constantly judging and calling ourselves names, and we're not capable of that level of kindness if we're not being kind and compassionate to ourselves. So for me, I am on a journey of self-love, understanding. Like this morning, one of the ladies said, I said, I want to celebrate who I am. And she was like, I want to know who I am.
Ooh, yes.
Right? So who am I? Celebrate who you are and help celebrate other people. Help other people celebrate who they are. And that's kindness, connection, compassion. So one of the things, and we're just going to quickly talk about this. You and I started talking about this, I think, in maybe November. I was back in Michigan in September and November. Secrets.
Ooh.
That's a big topic, and we could probably go forever on that. But there's something in kindness and self-love and compassion. Can you say anything about secrets?
In the family I grew up in, there were lots of secrets, but secrets eventually come out, and then you feel betrayed, or you feel discounted, or you feel like you've been made a fool of. Secrets, which are kept for vanity reasons or for reasons of because of sinful behaviors. Secrets destroy relationships. Secrets destroy families. Secrets destroy love because eventually the truth comes out and people go, how could you have been so cruel? How could you have, that now answers so many questions about why this happened and because this person acted that way.
Yeah.
Secrets are so damaging and it's really hard to forgive. But forgiveness is the beginning of wholeness.
Yes.
All of us have been betrayed in some way. And if you can figure out how to forgive that, let it go, it's the beginning of being really good to yourself.
Thank you. I feel like, when I talked about how we were blind to all of the racism and the things that were happening. We as white people don't see it because we don't experience it, right? And that's some level of secrets. And truly all across the nation, there are so many levels of things being unearthed, and people have kept hidden.
Or conspiracy theories that are even worse than secrets. It's the made up crap that does so much harm.
Yeah. So I think it's important for us too. Personal wholeness requires digging down in and figuring out what are the secrets that I'm holding, that I've been holding, that have not allowed me to live my life to the fullest. And working on forgiveness and self-love and compassion for self and compassion for others. I'm a person who is eternally optimistic and hopeful. I definitely go through my own trials and tribulations, but I was wired to be and believe that there is a new way ahead and a new way coming, and that what looks like destruction is the beginning of something new. And so I'm so incredibly grateful, Mom, that I have my relationship with you, that you're still here to be able to have this conversation, to find myself becoming more of an adult in my body, not always, but doing my best to become more adult. And that we even got to have this conversation. So many women can't even have this kind of conversation with their moms. So thank you for being my mom.
I'm honored that you asked me to give you this time. I really am. It was an absolute pleasure. A dream come true. A dream come true. Thank you.
So
I didn't have this kind of relationship with my mothers. I didn't have this kind of relationship with my grandmother. And I would just say that if you didn't have a great mother, or you didn't have a great father, put it there. I mean, you can be a good mother. You can be a good friend. You can be those things that you didn't have. If something's missing in your life, put it there.
And with that, thank you all for joining in. I'm excited to see who all were able to join us. I am going to be making this available on YouTube for posterity for the future. So if you missed any portion of this conversation, it will be available again. Thank you, Mom. I love you so much.
I love you more. Bye, honey.
Thank you all.
Thanks again, everybody.